Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Curt Schilling podcast. This is kind of I don't want to say an anniversary, but I guess it's, 17 years ago today. I remember it. I was waking up. I was actually going to be pitching against the Milwaukee Brewers that day at Bank One Ballpark in Arizona, and my wife woke me up and at, I think, 7 a.m., and I remember freaking out because my wife doesn't talk to me on the day I pitch, much less wake me up at 7 a.m., and the TV was on, and it took me a minute to register what I was seeing. And what I was seeing was a building, one of the two towers of the World Trade Center was on fire. And I was like, oh, my goodness. And she said, yeah, look at that. A plane just hit that. Like everybody else, I kind of cycled for a second, and I thought, okay, wow. And literally within 30 seconds, the second plane, second tower, and I given my passion for military history and understanding of it, I knew exactly what we were looking at, like everybody else did too. 17 years later, here we are. Are we better as a nation? Are we worse? Are we safer? Are we in more danger? Two gentlemen today, John Guandolo from UnderstandingTheThreat.com, who was on the ground in D.C. as a member of the FBI that day. We'll tell you and talk to you. We'll ask him about that experience. And Sean Parnell, who is an author, a former airborne ranger, 10th Mountain Division, and author. His book, Man of War, new book, Man of War, comes out today, and he and I are going to talk about things, and hopefully it's going to be a very exciting conversation you guys are going to want to listen to. But first, we're going to start with sound bites, and I'm not going to go back and focus on the sound bites of 9/11 because we all remember them. In many ways, there was no "This day will live in infamy" speech. There was footage, and we remember it. I want to get to the world we're living in now, because the world we're living in now, the country we're living in now, is attempting to be taken over by a group of people who have no appreciation for the things that have happened to get us here. And this first one, soundbite, is going to make your skin crawl. This is the fingernails on the chalkboard voice of Maxine Waters. She was receiving an award from the Stonewall Young Democratic Club of Los Angeles, which would be the only club in the country she could be receiving an award from. Listen to what she says about threatening people.
The lying president said that I had threatened all of his constituents. I did not threaten his constituents, his supporters. I do that all the time, but I didn't do it that time. But what bothered me so much was they tried to frame that as violence. That's not violence. As a matter of fact, I said the poster child for violence is the President of the United States.
Amen.
He's the one who threatens. Don't forget at his rallies what he said. Go ahead and beat him up. I'll take him out on a stretcher. He even said, if they jail you, I will bail you out, on and on and on. I do not advocate violence. I do not believe you should hit, kick, shoot. I don't think you should do that. I don't do that. And I won't allow anybody to define our protesting in that way. Right. And we have to tell people the difference between violence and incivility and protesting. And so I come from the school of those who use protests to move America forward and to change this country. And I'm proud of that.
So she threatens people all the time, but she's not into violence. Much like Elizabeth Warren and Nancy Pelosi and the other liberal women that spew, she is the very thing that makes people hate our political process and our politicians. Here's the thing. I don't know, and I'm asking you guys this question. Think about it. Do you know anybody in your life that Maxine Waters represents their values? I don't know anyone. I can honestly tell you, I know a lot of people that wouldn't vote for President Trump, but I don't know anybody that would vote for this woman. I don't know anybody that would vote. And again, a lot of the Clinton vote was I'm not voting for Trump. Think about the left claiming it's the party of minorities and women. Think about the women on the left. You have Pelosi, Boxer, Feinstein, Maxine Waters, Linda Saussure. On our side, we have Laura Loomer. We have Candace Owens. We have Kellyanne Conway and Sarah Huckabee. Women who, strong, independent, women who would never put a pink hat on because they understand where their place and their places wherever they make it. You've got the Mika Brzezinskis of the world and all these other people that are Omarosa. I mean, Omarosa claims that she was on a click, and you're going to hear this next soundbite. I want you to listen to this next soundbite. She was on The View. 4 more women that are, or three more women, not 4, that are as repulsive as they come. But I want you to listen to Omarosa. And remember this, guys. Omarosa is trying to tell you that she was on a click in the White House. She's probably the most untrustworthy human being in the last 20 years that I've known or seen. And she's trying to convince you that people confided in here. But listen to this shocking revelation. Listen to the audio of this new tape that Omarosa released on The View. Listen up.
You brought a tape with you.
I did.
And it's sort of brand new. What am I? And it's a tape of you-know-who talking about the Russia investigation last October. Can you set this up for us? Because I don't want to get this wrong.
When Donald Trump got bored, which was very often because his attention span was very short, he would sometimes try to figure out what meetings were taking place in the White House, and he would crash those meetings. This was a meeting with the entire communications staff and the press shop. We were meeting to talk about tax reform or his trip to North Korea, and he crashed the meeting. He came into the meeting, he sat down, and he started rambling from topic to topic. None of it makes sense. Right. And then, this is in October of last year. So this is 10 months after the election, right. Actually 12 months, and he's still talking about Hillary Clinton.
Can you play it, please?
I think Hillary's getting killed now with Russia. The real Russia story is Hillary and collusion. Somebody told me, hope you told me it was $9 million they spent on the phony report.
Someone just said that she was far worse for the country than we thought. She didn't know her own campaign was spending $9 million.
Did you see? Nobody knows who spent it. No, I heard it was not. I heard it was 5.7, but now they say it was 9. It was spent to a law firm. That way they can't trace it. But they trace it. One thing in this business, they trace it. And yeah, close to $9 million. I can't even believe it. The reason law firm is because this way you don't have to give any papers. But they found out it's definitely illegal, and it's illegal from a campaign standpoint, from a campaign financing standpoint. So the whole Russia thing, I think, to have turned around. What do you think, Sarah?
Absolutely.
Couple things. First off, the President of the United States can't crash a meeting. He's in the White House. That's his home. The President of the United States is the purveyor of every meeting in the White House. So it's not possible that the President can crash a meeting because every meeting is happening on the behest of the President. Every meeting is kind of his meeting. Secondly, I heard a guy who was just trying to banter with staff and is a common man, right? He's not walking in and acting as Omarosa would, which was, do you know who I am? He was walking in just chit-chatting, and he was also talking about, with inner staff, about what he knew to be true, the Russian collusion. And you heard her talk about, it's 10 months after the election, he's still enamored with Hillary Clinton. Well, he's still enamored with Hillary Clinton because he's going through all the crap he was going through and this country was going through because of her. That's why he was talking about it. And I got to tell you, think about this snake in the grass, lying, dirty, nasty woman who is clearly walking around the White House with her phone on recording everything. Think about what kind of person you have to be to do that and how phony you have to be to put yourself in a position as, hey, I'm on your team. Lying, thieving. This is a liberal to the core in some of the things and ways that she conducted herself. But she was on The View, along with Whoopi, who might be one of the most ignorant and uninformed people, along with Joy Behar, by the way. Now we go from a woman like that to a strong, independent, amazing woman who stands in front of the media on a daily basis and gets crushed and buries them, but speaks her mind. Here's the press secretary talking about this anonymous op-ed. Listen to what she has to say.
If there's an individual, whether or not, since we don't know who they are, if that individual is in meetings where national security is being discussed or other important topics, and they are attempting to undermine the executive branch, that would certainly be problematic and something that the Department of Justice should look into.
Is the White House actively trying to find out who this person is, or do you not really care and you're moving on to other things?
We're certainly focused on things that actually matter, and the staff here that is here to do their job and not undermine the great work that this president and this administration has done. And we're going to continue focusing on that. It's frankly, I think, sad and pathetic that a gutless, anonymous source could receive so much attention from the media. And I think that the American people would be much better served if we actually spent some time talking about some of the really important things that are facing our country and the things that this administration is doing to help fix them.
I have a separate question on Bob Woodward because President Trump continues to call him a liar and says his book is completely a work of fiction. He's also mentioned libel laws quite a bit. Is President Trump considering filing a lawsuit against Woodward?
Certainly keep you posted on that, but I think we've been extremely clear from the beginning. Many of the book's sources have already spoken out to refute. A couple of them, Chief of Staff John Kelly, aggressively pushed back in this. General Mattis aggressively pushing back in the claims. John Dowd also pushing back against the things that are attributed to him. And a number of people have come out and said that Woodward never even reached out to corroborate statements that were attributed to them, which seems incredibly reckless for a book to make such outrageous claims, to not even take the time to get a $10 fact checker to call around and verify that some of these quotes were happened. When no effort was made, it seems like a very careless and reckless way to write a book.
I think that's an important point. Nobody has corroborated anything he said in the book, number one. In fact, they've done the opposite. They've said that he never fact-checked with them, never talked to them. But more importantly, that nobody has corroborated their stories. Don't you find it odd that with all of the ex-cabinet members in this administration, none of them has come out and said, yeah, that's what I said, that's what I did? Does that not strike you as not just odd, but very telling about, and think about that, two of the reporters who broke one of the biggest stories in history have turned into complete frauds for $1 and to get on TV. And as they're wont to do, ESPN never fails to enter into the wrong side of a conversation. Serena Williams had a meltdown the other day. Turns out she had a meltdown because she got caught cheating. Her coach admitted as much, and she got caught cheating, and she got docked a game, actually. And she doubled down. And everybody else defending her has doubled down and tried to make this about her as a woman or her as a black woman, or instead of just an athlete who got caught cheating. On ESPN's Get Up, since no one watched it, I'll give you the sound bites for it. ESPN reporter Maria Taylor defends Serena Williams, she was accused by umpire Carlos Ramos of cheating, which she actually was. Her coach admitted it. Listen to this defense.
I instantly thought this is a woman who everything that she's dealt with her entire life has come brimming up to the top. And honestly, I fear the day for every woman when they hit that moment that they realize, you know what, I've been marginalized, I've been dealing with gender inequities, and I'm not standing for it anymore. And she has a daughter now, and she said it. And I hate that people are saying she's using her daughter in this situation, but she's trying to improve the way that women are viewed. We have seen male players badger officials and refs. They walk by. You don't tell me to be quiet. Don't tell me to do this. You got that call wrong. Blah, blah, blah. They're not getting verbally abused in that situation. She said liar and thief. Those words are not four-letter words. You don't teach your kids not to say those two words. And so I was very disappointed in the way that everything was handled. And I was proud of Serena for making that stand. I feel like she was well within her rights to be the competitor that she is. The reason why she has won 23 Grand Slams is because she is able to play with that type of fire and competitive nature.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying she hasn't, but quote unquote, as Maria Taylor says, everything she has dealt with up to now. What does that mean? This is a woman who is at the top of her profession, who has worked her ass off. What has she dealt with? I've never heard her tell a story about coming up and her color or her sex being the reason something horrible happened to her. I'm not saying it didn't. I'm just saying, what does Maria know about everything she has dealt with, first off? Secondly, she got caught cheating, and she was pissed. That's all this was. This was a spoiled athlete who, and by the way, I'm a huge fan. Okay, I think she's been very much kind of a Tiger Woods for tennis. I know I watch now some things that I wouldn't watch anyway. But you heard that she got caught cheating. Wasn't because she was a woman. Had nothing to do with any of her past transgressions. Her coach admitted it. They got caught, and she doubled down on being pissed, and she tried to explain to people that it was for some other reason. So, and you knew this was going to happen. Following that, or on the same morning, in that same morning, on Monday's MSNBC's Morning Joe, Mika Brzezinski talked about the meltdown. And, well, I'm just going to let her speak. Listen.
I think Serena is feeling like she's carrying a lot of responsibility as a woman in tennis, as an African-American woman, and I applaud all the ground that she is breaking. Having said that, there's just a few things that you have to go through when you watch what played out, because it is important, and there's some incredible gender conversations that we can have out of it. Bottom line, she was being coached, and her coach even admits to it. Complicated. If you listen to John McEnroe or Chris Everett, they'll say the umpire might have overplayed his hand a little bit and failed perhaps to give her some soft warnings along the way that could have mitigated things from bubbling up. But she was being coached, and she also did throw the racket. Personally, I don't think that's becoming, whether a man does it or a woman does it. And apparently it's against the rules, and she threw it, so it happened. And then for me, the biggest thing, especially given sort of the conversations I have with women about knowing their value and communicating effectively, one of the big know your value rules is don't take it personally. And the entire thing that played out on the court was extremely personal. It was about Serena. It was about being apologized to, and it just completely blew out of control and, quite frankly, impacted her tennis, you could argue. But even more so, took away from what was really happening. The winner was amazing, and she won. And really what should have happened for her was taken away by Serena, incapable of not taking this all personally and taking it all in. She is such a huge Mike Lupica that she could have waited, and she could have talked about these things on the big stage, so to speak, and really had some good conversations, debates even about whether the data shows that women perhaps are treated unfairly or differently because of the rules. But instead, she brought it onto the court.
In her lifetime, she said very little that is useful, but very little is going to include that soundbite, because she's right. That is exactly how Serena could have handled it. No one even knows the name of the winner of the tournament, one of the Grand Slams, by the way. Because of what Serena Williams did. She got her clock cleaned by an opponent who earned it, and she made it all about her. The fact of the matter is she cheated. She got caught cheating, and that's what happens when you get caught cheating. So anyway, we're going to take a short break. After the break, we're going to be joined by author Sean Parnell, and you guys are not going to want to miss this interview. It is going to be fun. And it's one I'm honored to get ready to partake in. Is the former Army Ranger and member of the 10th Mountain will join us and talk about his new book coming out, Man of War. Back in just a minute.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlow.
Censorship is a key issue here, particularly for people on the right. Do you think it was addressed adequately?
Definitely not. It was useful to name check Diamond and Silk. It was useful to check even politicians who had campaign ads that were shut down. But in every case, Zuckerberg was allowed to essentially dismiss the case and move on.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
Joining me now is a first-time guest for me, is somebody that I'm honored and privileged to speak to. He is Sean Parnell, author Sean Parnell. He is for Army Ranger, Airborne Ranger. Sean, good morning. God bless. It's great to have you, man. Thank you.
Hey, it's great to be here. It's truly a privilege. I'm so psyched.
The feeling is very mutual. So I'm going to laugh when you're going to laugh when I say this. I was born and raised a Pittsburgh Pirates fan and a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. My dad was
no way.
101st. Yes, my dad was 101st Airborne. He was born in Somerset, Pennsylvania. So I was born I grew up in the 70s with the We Are Family and the greatest football team in the history of the NFL. So we do have that mutually in common.
Well, we could have used you on the Pirates for the last 30 years. You're such a huge fan of Pittsburgh, but you never played for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I didn't. Actually, it was funny because when I got there to the big leagues, it's been a challenging a lot of time for that franchise just because of the financial issues. But my first big league shutout was against the Pirates, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is one of those moments, you know? Hey, listen, first of all, you 2 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart, and numerous other medals from service. You've written Outlaw Platoon and your new book, Man of War, which is out today, if I'm not mistaken. You can find that, guys, at HarperCollins Publishers, Amazon.com, anywhere books are sold. Talk to me about this one, what this one's about, why you wrote it, and what you hope to get out of it.
Well, I mean, I was inspired to join the military after September 11th and just watching. I was a college kid, didn't even really know my major. I was like an elementary education major back in the day when 9/11 happened. I watched those planes crash into the World Trade Centers, and I just thought to myself, how can I sit here and do nothing when ordinary Americans are sacrificing everything for people that they don't even know? And so joined the military, went through some pretty awesome training, went to combat. I was in combat in Afghanistan for 485 days. I mean, it was just like the worst deployment you could possibly imagine. I think my platoon had an 85% casualty rate. I mean, everyone was wounded, some twice, some 3 times. And we stayed in the fight the whole time and took the fight to the enemy. And then I came back and I thought to myself, I have to live a life worthy of the sacrifice of my soldiers and everybody who sacrificed for this country. I was lucky enough to make it back alive, and I'm going to earn it every single day. I'm going to wake up and try to do a lot of these bucket list things that, probably wouldn't have done had I not served. I probably wouldn't have been driven to do it, to be honest. And so I wanted to write a character. Eric Steele is my hero in Man of War. But I wanted to write a character who embodied everything that is exceptional about this country and embodied all the selflessness and the heroism of those first responders on 9/11 who ran into the flames that day.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, excuse me, I think that's a common trait, Sean, is I've gotten to know. I was at Ground Zero less than a month or two after this happened. Well, less than a month after this happened, during the 2001 World Series when we went to New York. And the day I was there, I got to walk in to get to see the command center, and they actually removed the remains of 2 firefighters that day. And obviously, I was touched in ways that, and everybody has a different experience, but the common thread for you, of you, and about you and other people is much like the first responders who didn't run away from the World Trade Center, they ran into it. There was a significant portion of Americans, starting with you and Robert O'Neill and Chris Paranto and countless and thousands of others who saw this and weren't in the military at the time, weren't even thinking about the military at the time. Pat Tillman comes to mind as well, and who decided to do something about it. And it's one of the things that when you look back on that, I was just talking with John Guandolo, who works for UnderstandingTheThreat.com, and I was talking to John about the very day. He was on the FBI response team in D.C. when 9/11 happened. And I'm wondering you're a soldier. You have a soldier's heart, which I guess is the way to put it. And that is, you're the kind of person that doesn't run away from gunfire. You run towards gunfire. And I'm not talking about in a bravado, heroic way. You realize that there's a job to do, and you don't expect other people to do it. How? Were you raised that way? Was that a family thing for you?
No, I don't come from a military family. I just, when I was in college, I didn't know the only thing I was good at was drinking beer, and finding the cheapest beer I could, drinking PBR, and it was just one of those things that when 9/11 happened, my life became laser focused, and all I wanted to do was serve something greater than myself. I mean, I feel like everybody's life has, we can think back, we all have those moments of clarity where you say to yourself, like, I'm doing the exact right thing, what I'm supposed to be doing right now at this second. And that's how I felt. And so, and really, I was no different. I mean, to be mentioned in the same sentence as guys like Rob O'Neill and Paranto, and those dudes are heroes.
But hold on a second, Sean. Now, I'm going to respectfully interrupt you, okay? I find it very common thread amongst you guys. Whether you know it or not, whether you believe you were raised that way, there was that inside of you. Whether it was dormant or it was something that motivated you. It's different, right? I believe God put us on this planet to make a difference in other people's lives, and I think at some point in our life we are presented with that option in the best possible way. Like we're for me, God bless it was 22 years of professional baseball, which was awesome. For you, it was a seminal moment that changed the world. I mean, there are people. I just don't understand it. People, I want people to understand, you walked away from and I don't want to canonize you and make you uncomfortable, but the fact of the matter is, I've been over there twice and been honored to be able to spend a couple of weeks in theater during the war and visiting soldiers over there. And it was a job. And it was a job that I'm not going to speak for you, but your fellow warfighters were honored to be able to do, I guess is what I'm.
Yes. There's no question. You're right. You're right. I mean, people thank me for my service, and I'm truly grateful to have them thank me. But, I always say to them, it was an honor to serve. And in watching all the 9/11 footage on TV today, I mean, I was medically retired. I fractured my skull in 3 places. So I was put out of the military before my time. But watching this footage makes me want to grab my boots and rifle and get back into the fight. Like, it's just in my blood. I just feel like so much about being an American warrior is synonymous with also being a protector. Like you said, that the need to want to run into the flames. It's just it's just how I'm wired. It's not like a bravery thing. I don't even think of it like that. Like you said, it's not a bravado thing. It's just, we have an exceptional way of life here, and we have an exceptional country, and it's worth fighting for, and it's worth dying for.
And I couldn't agree more. Like I said, I wanted to be you when I grew up. I wanted to wear this country's uniform. I wanted to wear that flag on my shoulder, and I wanted to, because the one thing that I knew and I thought was always amazing was the fact that my dad never stopped serving. When he got out of, my dad was a Screaming Eagle, and he was in the 101st. But when he got out, he still worked towards being a better American, I guess is the corny way to put it.
Yes.
And you were an airborne ranger, and you served it well. People that don't study the military don't understand how awesome this is, but you were a member of the 10th Mountain Division, which is, for those of you that don't know military, let's just say they're just total badasses. And he's being very, they are. The 10th Mountain is trained to fight warfare in pretty much every possible ecological environment you can imagine, and above and beyond things you can imagine. 2 Bronze Stars, which, I laugh because people talk about my career and they're like, wow, 6 All-Star games. And I look at this and say, oh my God, 2 Bronze Stars. That's like way cooler than an All-Star game.
Man, I don't even know what to say, Kurt. Like, because it's funny, like you say you grew up wanting to wear the uniform. I grew up wanting to be you. I grew up wanting to play baseball. I just couldn't throw a ball that hard. I mean, I couldn't throw 90 miles an hour. No matter what I tried to do, no matter how often I practiced. My brothers pitched too. I mean, just couldn't get there. Couldn't get there.
Well, it's funny. It's funny because God puts it before us a path, and oftentimes we just don't have any idea. I mean, think about this. I marvel at this because I ask a lot of people like you, Sean, to think. I know we all talk about September 11th, right? But I ask you to think about September 10th. Think about your life September 10th, and it's something I try to get to people to think about. Think about your life September 10th. What was going on? You were looking probably at the next party you were getting ready to go to, and you couldn't wait to get dressed.
Yeah, we were preparing for a party.
I mean, think
that's profound.
Yes,
it's profound what you just said.
Yeah, and then
you're right.
And then September 12th, the entire world changes, and everybody in it, for better or worse. And that to me again, that is one of the reasons why I couldn't be more honored to speak to you. And let me just say again, I want you to tell people about the book, Man of War, Sean Parnell. It comes out today. You can find it anywhere good books are sold. Harper Publishing. HarperCollins Publishers sells it. Amazon.com. You can find it everywhere. You're on a book tour, I assume. Where are you headed and where are you going to be?
Yeah, I'm in New York City right now doing the launch, and so I'm just doing tons of media up here, and then I've got probably 17 events that I'll announce on my social media probably within the next 5 days or so to let everybody know where I'm going to be. But yeah, Man of War is out today, and it's got a character in it that just believes at its very core that America is an exceptional nation and it's worth dying for. And I know you believe that, Curt. You know, I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time. But yeah, it's out today, and it's just an honor to be doing this stuff.
Well, no, I appreciate this. Hey, listen, I don't want to close out with a messy question, but I want to ask you, and I'm not looking for an ideology. I'm curious to know how. So you went and fought, and you watched brothers and sisters, fellow warfighters, fall in action, and I don't even want to guess what that had to be like. But the things that you guys did around the world, the country that I look at today has gotten so far from the country that I grew up in many ways, and in other ways it's very much the same. And I wonder if you aren't incensed at times when you watch TV by the things that Americans are doing and saying, not just the flag, but the lack of respect. Because I got my argument, Sean, is that the farther away from God and the dinner table this country has gotten, the worse we have gotten. I was raised at my dinner table.
Same here. Most of this country's path is charted and values developed around the dinner table. And yes, I think that much of the problem that we have in this country, and, of course I always think of it within this context, is because the people that enjoy the freedom every day that this country provides often take it for granted, and they've never been farther away from those who protect it. And so part of my mission with writing this book, Curt, has been, there's a lot of ways to bridge the gap between warriors and civilians, through charity work, through getting out there and telling your story, but also through mainstream fiction stories. Like, I really feel like there is not, we've ceded Hollywood, conservatives have ceded Hollywood, we've ceded the news, and we've ceded education to our detriment for the last 50 years. And look what's happened.
Because we have morals, we have integrity, and we have ethics.
Right.
And that's why we've ceded. We've let the left die on those hills. I want to tell you what an honor and what a pleasure it has been. I would love to have you back. There's a lot of things. Once your book tour is over, I'd like to get in touch with you and talk to you about a couple initiatives that I want to do for veterans. And let me just say this before you leave, Sean. If you are someone out there that works or has a business and you hire people, I can honestly tell you from experience, there is no better. I don't care what the position is. You want to find somebody that understands leadership. You want to find somebody that understands team, what team means, what it means to lead, what it means to sacrifice. You want to hire somebody in your company that has all those values built in. You don't have to teach them. Hire a veteran. So, Sean Parnell, God bless you. Thank you, buddy. You take care of yourself.
Thanks, Curt. Thanks for having me.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
I said that it's the epitome of hypocrisy. Unless you fall in line with their liberal agenda, this uniparty, globalist, liberal agenda, they will never support you. They use the whole gender issue, of course, as some kind of tool to prop up their messaging, but it's the phoniest thing.
Sirius XM Patriot, Channel 125.
Joining me now is a gentleman who I've been able to, and I'm proud to have been able to have in the past. He's someone who has been, whose life, like everyone else, has changed on 9/11/2001. But his did so in ways that I don't think a lot of us can quite imagine. He's John Guandolo from UnderstandingTheThreat.com. Good morning, John. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Curt. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, talk to me about the day it happened. What was your life like, and what was the immediate aftermath? Where were you, and all that?
Well, on September 11th, 2001, I was assistant team leader for the FBI's SWAT team at the Washington, D.C. field office, and we were actually in Southern Virginia doing training. And we saw what happened, and obviously we loaded up and drove about 90 miles an hour with lights and sirens back to D.C. And when we got there, we got our assignments. And I ended up, on the first day, we were at the Pentagon doing some security assignments. And then after that, I was actually a paramedic. It was a secondary duty of mine as an FBI agent. And so I ended up spending about 7 weeks every day at the Pentagon doing recovery work. So supporting agents doing recovery myself, collecting remains of people and things like that. And one thing I want to share with your audience was on the Sunday after 9/11, I recovered we were working, and a guy right near me goes, "Hey, what's this?" And I knew exactly what it was, and I said, I'll take charge of that. It was a Naval Academy ring, and I'm a 1989 graduate of the Naval Academy. And I ended up cleaning it up, and the inscription had a name, Robert Dolan. And on that day, the newspaper literally had a full 2-page a listing of photographs and names of everyone killed at the Pentagon. And I found, Robert Dolan, and it said Alexandria, Virginia. So I literally just looked up that name in the phone book and called his house, and was able to give the ring to the family that day. And it was incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to say I can imagine, because I can't. You were at the tip of the spear on a domestic sense. So I want to ask you your first thoughts. The first plane. Did you see the event unfold in New York? I mean, you saw the first plane hit, and then the second plane hit. We
were actually when we were training, we were actually doing work indoors. And we were right near the command center of where we were training. And a guy came out and said, "Hey, a plane just flew into the World Trade Center." And we watched the second plane fly in, and that's when we kind of realized.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. What was your first thought when you saw – I mean, because my first thought when I saw the first plane was there's something odd about this. I mean, you knew right away it was a big plane, but does your alarm bells are going off in your head, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you realize this is an attack. We're at war, and that was the footing and the mindset I was in. We ought to be on a war footing. This is I mean, I'm a combat veteran. We had a lot of guys on the SWAT team that were Marines. We had a couple Navy SEALs, and everybody knew what was going on. And it was very refreshing that everyone just got to work, and there wasn't a lot of hype. It was just like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that that is part of the for me part of the awesomeness that was. And my father was the same way. That when there is a situation where everyday Americans, everyday people panic and freak out. Being a veteran has taught you to be, to go the other way, to be composed, right? I mean, so anyway, listen, I wanted to talk to you about where we are 17 years later. Where we saw all that unfold. We know now about, all of the we now know more about the hijackers than we do about a lot of the victims. We know how they were supported. We know how they were financed. We know how they got here. We know how they did all the things that they did. The world changed dramatically then, and our airports became hardened targets. We've had very few incidents domestically since then from a big perspective, and I don't mean to discredit anything that's happened, but you've been in the trenches with understandingthethreat.com. You've been at the local level. You've seen the changes. I hate to ask this question because I think I know what the answer is, but is the everyday American any safer today than they were 17 years ago when you think about what we're up against?
No, we're less safe. It's much worse today than it was on September 12th, 2001. because at least we had a let's go take care of the problem. Today, what we've been convinced of, if you look at the attacks, now I'm going to underscore it or I'm going to undersell this. There have been 71 attacks in 24 states inside the United States since 9/11. 160 Americans dead, over 500 wounded. And if you count the Las Vegas attack, which I will add that's another 58 dead, another 800 and some wounded. And that's, the guy who perpetrated the Las Vegas attack. The Islamic State claimed the attack and said he was a soldier of the caliphate who'd converted to Islam.
Right.
And there's a lot of evidence to support that. But either way, you're talking about a number of attacks. And these attacks, we can look at from the Fort Hood shooting to the Boston Marathon bombing to all these other attacks. They have support from a network here in the United States that is primarily led by the Muslim Brotherhood. This network includes thousands of organizations, and the government, the federal government, is doing nothing to dismantle that network. You have evidence today that the Saudi government, intelligence operators from the Saudi government ran a dry run a year prior to 9/11, and that the ambassador, Prince Bandar, and his wife sent $130,000 into an account that supported the hijackers, some of the hijackers. We know that immediately after the attacks of 9/11, Pakistani intelligence helped al-Qaeda fighters move because they assumed they were going to be targets of U.S. military operations. And we have Pakistani intelligence involved. And by the way, Osama bin Laden was less than a mile from the Pakistani military academy. Certainly
less than a mile.
Hard to imagine Pakistani intelligence didn't know where he was, yet this government considers Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, quote, allies in this war. Now, I don't think it could get any worse than that as it is today. I hate to say that because it keeps getting worse.
Right.
But we're at a place where the enemy is advising us. We can point by name to, you and I have talked about this, the advisors at DOD and the Pentagon and to specific generals like General Allen and General Petraeus are taking advice from, quote, coalition partners and Islamic advisors that we can demonstrate have the same ideology as ISIS and al-Qaeda. And yet we refuse to identify the threat. That
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that 100% from the night of the people we're dealing with, from the 9/11 hijackers to marathon bombers to Fort Hood, they all say we are Muslims doing what Muslims are commanded to do. We're commanded to wage war,
and they've told us. Right. Yeah, I mean, I've read the Quran now 2.5 times. The third time was, but they've told us this is going to happen. They've told us they were going to infiltrate the world, so to speak, through the Syrian migrant crisis and all the other stuff. Let me ask you a question, and I've asked you this before, but I'm asking you from a deeper perspective. I don't want a top-level answer. I want someone like you who's smart and understands this. It's 17 years after the fact. We know for a guaranteed, bona fide, 100% fact that the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization and supports terrorists. There's no doubt. Why have they and CARE, Community on Islamic Relations, why have they not been deemed terrorist organizations? Why are they allowed to operate inside our borders when we know for a fact that they have been complicit in one of the biggest trials in the history of this country, and we know that they're guilty?
Because of the fact that the very people advising our government officials on how to respond to terrorism and to these matters are the bad guys, and they're advising us, and we're consulting with them on how to move forward. And so, of course, we're not going to designate them if the Muslim Brotherhood's advising us and our national security staffs and our DOD and State Department, FBI. Of course, we're not going to advocate for designating them a terrorist organization. We just had a hearing 6 weeks ago or whatever it was up on Capitol Hill, and all 4 of the people that testified advised not to designate the Muslim Brotherhood, or if we did, just the parts of them overseas that are violent. when the Muslim Brotherhood themselves said the way they do what they do is primarily in the nonviolent realm. It's influence operations, it's propaganda, it's espionage, it's counterintelligence. It's just catastrophic failure at the national security level in the United States that the very people we're fighting, one part of them wears suits and convinces us that they're not a threat. That's why we haven't designated them.
Okay.
Yeah.
None of that makes any sense. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's no logic in that. Let me just say this. I don't think I'm not susceptible to hyperbole for the most part, right? I tend to be very rational about things, but I have to tell you that I think someday, and I don't know when that day is, but someday in the near future, we're going to find out that the largest scandal in the history of this country, it wasn't the Clinton stuff with Uranium One. It was not the fake Russian conspiracy that Mueller did, the DNC. It's going to be the fact that the Awan brothers were involved at the highest levels of our government and were literally inside our government at every. There was nothing that they couldn't have exposed them to. Nothing. I think that's going to end up being the greatest threat or the biggest scandal in the history of our lives.
Well, I certainly think that is a massive indicator of what we're talking about, what you and I are talking about, is that you've got a Pakistani intelligence operation committing espionage inside the U.S. Capitol on members of Congress, and it's ho-hum. And it's not just – listen, I want to be very clear. I'm not upset as a guy who was on the ground digging through the rubble at 9/11 at the Pentagon. I am not upset with the jihadis because they're doing what jihadis do. I'm not upset with the Marxists. They do what Marxists do. So does Communist China. It's the leadership, and specifically the Republican leadership, that is complicit in being inattentive, incapable, and unwilling to identify the threat and deal with it. That's the problem. The Marxist Party of America, also known as the Democrats, they're doing what I would expect them to do, and their collaborators in the media are doing, what I would expect them to do. I'm talking about, mainstream ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, CNN. They're doing what I expect them to do. How could you be upset with that? That's what Marxists do, who want to overthrow your country.
Right.
But these people who are portrayed to be patriots and call themselves Republicans and stand up there and continue to give aid and comfort to the enemy. Legally we call that misprision of treason. That is literally aiding and abetting the enemies. And until we start locking those people up, for literally misprision of treason, sedition, treason, whatever it is, I don't see this turning around. And that's why I have said for years and still say we're going to win or lose this war at the local level, at the county and city level. And citizens, I encourage them not to spend time figuring out how to fix the FBI, how to fix Congress, what's Mr. Trump doing today. Figure out what your local school board is doing today. Figure out what your Chamber of Commerce is doing. What's your mayor doing? What's your police chief doing? Spend your time focusing there and looking at the jihadis and jihadi organizations inside your city and your county and crushing them and vanquishing them from your county and your city, because the federal government is incapable of fighting and winning this war right now.
Right. No, I don't know what to say other than I want to see. I want to call and talk to you at some point and have you say, "Yeah, I feel good about the direction we're headed in." And I don't mean that in a comical way or anything, but it's frustrating for me because you and I have talked many times, and I don't feel like anybody's getting the wake up call. John, I gotta wrap it up. But listen, God bless you, and thank you for everything you've done since then and everything you continue to do. You stay safe, and I will talk to you again soon, buddy.
Thanks, Curt. Appreciate you having us on.
I want to let you guys know, first off, when I do this closing thoughts thing, I don't write down a topic. I usually, because I don't like to I don't like to give prepared speeches. I like to kind of speak kind of from the heart for better or worse. And here is my take today. It's 17 years after one of the most horrific events in the history of this country. And I want to make something clear. You and I have gotten along with our daily lives the way we have. And we have our holidays a couple times a year where we barbecue and we put our American flags out and we think about our men and women. And then we go about our job and our business and our families and all the other things that we do. And I think there are times, and I feel like, especially with this younger generation, that we forget. We forget that 24/7, 365, there are men and women around the world manning a post, whether it be 2 a.m. in Boston or noon in Los Angeles. Somebody, probably aged 19 to 22, is standing post in a place where people want them dead. And I say that for this reason. I want us to continue remembering on a daily basis. And I'm not saying that you have to wake up every day and thank the gods that or thank God that there are people fighting. But I want you just to at times remember them. At times when you're talking about, oh my God, what a horrible day I'm having. Think about the 21-year-old who's in Afghanistan or in Pakistan. It's 120 degrees and he's got 40 pounds of Kevlar on, and he's looking for a cave. And think about the logistics of supporting the millions of men and women around the world, the people that do those jobs. Think about those things, because those holidays, those bad days that you share with your family, they don't. That Christmas morning that you wake up, they don't. They wake up to go on duty. That birthday party that didn't turn out as good as you would have liked it to, you were there. They're not. The thing it is, and I say that on the heels of this Nike campaign for this. I feel like the Nike campaign has diminished the meaning of the word sacrifice. Sacrifice has to be painful. Sacrifice has to be you giving away something or having something taken away from you that is painful, right? Colin Kaepernick didn't sacrifice anything. He never has. Colin Kaepernick was raised by a white father and a white mother who adopted him. He was an incredibly gifted athlete who made it to the NFL, and he was out of the NFL because he became a bad player. God put us on this planet to make a difference in people's lives, and that not everybody picks, in my opinion, the right way to do that, which is just my opinion. But the fact of the matter is, this country, through all the good and bad days we have, this country is still made up of the most amazing men and women on the planet. Men and women who are standing at post for me. They don't know me. For you. Around the world. And you can trivialize it and all you want as a liberal. And you can downplay what it is as a liberal. But the fact of the matter is, they do the job no one else, none of us have volunteered to do. And I don't ever want us to forget that. 17 years after the fact that thousands of people were killed by an ideology driven by hatred and disgust of who we are and our life. And the fact that the man who gave his life on the cross for us, that's sacrifice. Okay? That's what a sacrifice is. That's the ultimate sacrifice. And when you put up Colin Kaepernick's picture, it makes me sick to think about the fact that picture would stand beside the men who didn't come home from Benghazi, or stand beside the picture of a Pat Tillman who walked away from that sacrifice. Walking away from a multi-million-dollar football career to serve in the armed forces, that's a sacrifice. And I don't want you to forget what that word means, because when you experience it in your own life, you'll understand that sacrifice involves pain, whether it be physical, psychological, or both. And we live in the greatest country in the world because our country still makes men and women who want to give that sacrifice for you and I. And I want you to remember that if you can, not just on Labor Day or Veterans Day and any of these Memorial Days. especially on those days, but also remember that every day of our lives, a soldier has tapped the walk on in front of the tomb of the unknown soldier. And those men and women serve around the world. So anyway, God bless you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Sean will be here tomorrow, and we'll be doing the show with Sparkles. So you guys have a great day. God bless. Thanks for checking in. Catch you tomorrow.